let's talk about the Mula Bandha. The Mula Bandha traditionally was an energetic root lock, and it goes with the other two bandhas, the throat and the upper belly lock. And these locks are originally designed as ways to energetically bring energy and conserve energy in your center. If we look at the physical side of those locks, particularly the Mula Bandha, it's the pelvic floor. There's no doubt about it. The Mula Bandha is basically lifting the pelvic floor, because the perineum and the areas in which we often instruct the Mula Bandha trigger a pelvic floor lift. So we often say, pull the pelvic floor up, pulling everything up between coccyx and pubic bone, or whatever we say, however we teach it, holding up, Mula Bandha. I often hear people instruct this in a class ongoingly. So they'll go into a sun salutation or a warrior or whatever, it might be Ashtanga, and they'll say Mula Bandha. And so if we look at what are the implications of us using the pelvic floor, because isn't it a great thing? Isn't it like one of the main benefits in yoga that we actually tell people to lift their pelvic floor? Yes and no. Let's have a look at what the pelvic floor is really there for. It supports everything above it, but makes up the bottom of a canister. This canister starts with the diaphragm at the top, finishes with the pelvic floor at the bottom, and all of the other abdominal muscles and back muscles are wrapping around that canister. When we look at something as simple as breathing, as we inhale, that diaphragm, which is underneath the ribs here, goes down, flattens down, ribs go out. Now the pressure is going to go down into the belly. The belly is like a big balloon full of liquid and nowhere for any of that pressure to escape. It has to be passed equally in 360 degrees. So as that happens and that diaphragm goes down, our belly comes out a little bit, ribs go out, the back ribs go out. We're starting to intelligently share the increase of pressure around. But the bottom of the canister, which is the pelvic bowl, is part of that. It's a huge part of that. So every single inhale, the pressure increases, goes down, and the pelvic floor slightly goes down too. It receives that pressure increase by design. Totally normal, totally healthy. So when we exhale, that pelvic floor that went down a little bit, the increased pressure, everything eccentrically kind of stretches, it'll go back up. So every single in and exhale, insert Mula Bandha and have a think about how many breaths we do in a sun salutation or in an hour's worth of yoga. If we teach people to pull up the pelvic floor, but we don't really give them many instructions to release it, we're now going to totally block out the whole bottom part of that canister. Not only are we going to lead to fatigue in that area, imagine holding the bicep for 5 hours in this position, fully tense, because we don't really tell people to 10% tense it, we go lift it. And they go, oh yeah, I'm lifting it 100%. Imagine holding something in your hand for 5 hours. Ugh. You wouldn't make 5 hours, it would really hurt and it would fail. So we run the risk of fatiguing the pelvic floor to the point of failure, which can lead to things like stress incontinence, passing urine when you didn't want to, coughing, sneezing. And that is not something that only happens to people that have had a baby. I promise you, I'm one of them. I've been struggling with this for a really long time, and it turns out that I had a fatigued, very tensed pelvic floor. There are a few other things that can lead to a tight pelvic floor which are not relevant in this video, but I want to just say that there are obviously always other things that we need to consider when looking at pelvic floor health or any part of the body in general. But it can lead to that, but it can also lead to dysfunctional breathing. I want you to now take yourself into a standing position, take your legs a little bit wider, bend your knees and soften into the floor. I want you to put your hands on your belly and take an inhale. You'll notice some movement there. I want you to put your hands on the side of your ribs now and then breathe in. And you'll notice some movement there. Put your hands on your back, breathe in. Of course, don't forget to breathe out each time, otherwise it's a very long inhale. And you'll see that there's a little bit of movement there. And then if you just focus on your pelvic floor or down into that pelvic bowl for a moment, and you might feel as you inhale, there's a little bit of pressure increase. So if you become aware of that, you can really figure out in your own head, oh, I see, like I wouldn't want to suck in the pelvic floor for an hour because it needs to move with my breathing, and that creates a really nice, healthy, pressured system between your chest cavity and your belly. So How do we teach pelvic floor well? I would say make a big emphasis at the beginning of the class on what the Mula Bandha is, maybe taking people through a quick practice of it before they're in the flow, and then telling people that it's really important to focus on releasing Mula Bandha in intervals so that you actually work that pelvic floor into its relaxed state again. It is an ongoing thing that I hear a lot in class. I hear people saying, Mula Bandha, pull it up, pull it up. I very rarely hear anybody telling anyone to actually relax it. And if we just contract a muscle, we never ever relax it, it's not going to be a functional muscle group. Thanks.